Welcome to the Book Review Podcast. Today, we're diving deep into a book that's become, well, a real cornerstone in self-help and business, but definitely with an unconventional edge.
Oh yeah, definitely unconventional.
It's The 4-Hour Workweek. Escape 9 to 5, Live Anywhere, and Join the New Rich by Tim Ferriss.
A title that grabs you for sure.
It really does. And look, this isn't your standard guide to, climbing the corporate ladder. Not at all.
It kind of flips that whole concept on its head.
Exactly. It challenges the whole 9 to 5 structure. And it's interesting. People like Dan Partland, the Emmy-winning producer, and even John Lusk from Microsoft have found real value in it.
Which tells you it's not just fringe thinking, right? There's substance there.
Yeah.
What I find fascinating from the get-go is how Ferriss just fundamentally questions these assumptions we have about work and success and, well, life structure. It's not just about, quick hacks for more money. It's a deeper thing, reevaluating what you value, how you use your time, your most precious asset, really.
Absolutely. The core mission, it seems, is flipping the script on those default work-life priorities.
Right. Forget grinding for decades for some far-off retirement.
Yeah, exactly. He talks about weaving mini retirements into your life now, while, and this is the key part, strategically boosting income and, slashing your work hours.
It sounds almost too good to be true, doesn't it? Decoupling income from time.
Totally. And automating income, outsourcing tasks, embracing this mobile lifestyle. Freedom, basically.
The promise is pretty bold.
Yeah.
Tools to escape the rat race and design your life of freedom and adventure. Starting now.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Where did this whole idea even start for Ferriss? What's the origin story here?
Well, it really comes from his own experience, his personal journey. He talks about being caught in that trap himself.
How so?
He was running his sports supplement company, Brain Quicken LLC, working insane hours, 14-hour days.
Wow.
Yeah. And making decent money for it, around $40,000 a year back then.
But he wasn't happy.
Exactly. Deeply unhappy, actually. He mentions this moment, speaking at Princeton, his old university, to these future investment bankers. And even though his company was profitable, he felt like a total outlier, almost an imposter compared to the successful people.
That's relatable, isn't it? That disconnect between external success and internal feeling. I bet a lot of listeners have felt that.
I think so. That feeling, despite the money, it seemed to be a huge turning point. Made him realize the conventional path wasn't his path to fulfillment.
Right. And maybe not for everyone.
Precisely.
So this unhappiness, it wasn't just a bad week. It got to the point where he genuinely hated his life, despite the income.
Yeah. So June 2004, he does something pretty radical.
What's that?
Buys a one-way ticket to Europe.
Yeah.
Backpack. Hits reset.
Just like that. Wow. Takes courage.
Totally. Planned for 4 weeks in Spain initially, just to recharge. But that morphed into this indefinite period of, as he puts it, a final exam in automation and experimental living.
A final exam, huh? Imagine doing that. What would that feel like for you, listening right now? Just stepping off the treadmill?
And it's during this exam that the core ideas really started forming. One key experiment. Limiting email.
Email. The bane of modern existence for many.
Right. He restricted himself to checking it just 1 hour every Monday morning. That's it.
1 hour a week. That sounds impossible for most people. How much time do you spend on email?
Think about it. And the result for Ferriss, get this, profits went up.
Up? By how much?
By 40%.
No way. Just by checking email less.
Yeah. By removing himself as the bottleneck, focusing communication, efficiency soared. It's a powerful illustration early on. Less, but more strategic effort can yield way better results, especially with time.
Okay, that's a perfect lead-in to the framework of the book. He uses this acronym, right? DEAL.
Yes, DEAL. It gives a really clear structure, makes these unconventional ideas easier to grasp, and importantly, implement. It stands for definition, elimination, automation, and liberation.
DEAL.
Got it. Each part builds on the last, leading towards that new rich lifestyle he talks about.
Okay, let's break it down. First pillar, D for definition. For anyone listening, this seems foundational. Getting crystal clear on what you actually want and redefining success on your terms.
Exactly. He really pushes you to challenge the status quo right away.
Yeah.
But not just being different to be different, right? It's about being more effective.
Like the cold calling example.
Yeah, exactly. Calling it weird hours, super early, super late to bypass gatekeepers and reach decision makers. It's about strategic thinking, not just following the herd. Have you ever tried stuff like that? Unconventional approaches.
It makes you think. And he really goes after the traditional retirement idea too, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. For anyone saving for decades down the line, he asks tough questions. Is it financially sustainable? With longer lives, inflation.
Right.
And maybe more importantly, what if you get there and you're just bored, lost your purpose after decades of work?
That's a scary thought, actually.
It leads right into this idea of relative income versus absolute income.
Okay, explain that.
So the new rich, as he calls them, and that could be you prioritize relative income. Maybe you earn the same, maybe even a bit less at first, but you work way fewer hours.
Ah, so your time becomes much more valuable.
Exactly. Your effective hourly rate skyrockets. Think what you could do with an extra 20, 30 hours a week. That's real wealth.
Yeah, that's huge. Now, the part about defining fear really hit me. For anyone feeling stuck, afraid to change.
This is crucial. He says you have to define the worst case scenario. Get specific. What really is the absolute worst that could happen?
He used his own experience, right? Feeling trapped despite the money.
Yeah. And outlining his nightmare, the actual tangible downsides if he made a change, paradoxically, gave him the courage to act, to book that ticket. It often makes the fear seem smaller, manageable.
It takes it from this vague dread to something concrete. What's your nightmare scenario if you don't make a change? That's a powerful question for listeners.
It really is such a practical tool to overcome inertia. And he also poses that simple but profound question. What if I did the opposite?
Just to challenge norms.
Exactly, to break out of those ingrained assumptions about how things must be done.
And I loved the concept. Doing the unrealistic is easier than doing the realistic.
That's a great one.
His logic being there's less competition for the really big, ambitious goals because most people assume they're impossible.
So they aim lower, where everyone else is aiming, fighting for scraps. It's a fascinating perspective shift on ambition.
Definitely. So how does this definition phase get practical?
It leads to setting a target monthly income TMI and doing what he calls dreamlining.
Streamlining.
Yeah. For you trying to picture this, it means defining the specific stuff, experiences, lifestyle you want. Not vague wishes, but tangible things, and then figuring out the actual real cost.
So not just I want to travel, but I want to spend 2 months in Thailand, learn to cook, and that will cost X amount per month. Putting numbers on the dreams.
Precisely. It gives you a concrete financial target to aim for.
Makes it real.
And the final piece of definition, crucially, is taking immediate small steps, even tiny ones. Break down the big dream, start now, build momentum, overcome that getting started hurdle. What's one small step you could take today?
Okay, good question. So we've defined. Now, elimination. For anyone wanting more time, this sounds key. Getting ruthless about ditching time wasters.
Absolutely. This is where the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, really comes in strong.
Focus on the 20% that yields 80% of the results.
Exactly. Identify those vital few activities, tasks, or even customers that produce the vast majority of your desired outcomes. His example is striking. 5 customers brought in 95% of his revenue.
Wow. But he was spending most of his time on the other 95%.
You got it. Chasing the low-yield stuff. Does that sound familiar in your life or work? It's a constant battle.
Oh, totally. Which leads to his point about being busy versus being productive. Not the same thing at all.
Not even close. He calls it work for work, W4W. Just doing stuff to feel occupied. Even if it doesn't move the needle on your actual goals. It's a trap.
So what are the practical strategies here?
Things you can use right away. Batching similar tasks is a big one.
Like doing all your calls at once, all your emails at once.
Yeah. Instead of switching contexts constantly, which kills focus and efficiency, group similar things together. Emails, calls, writing, whatever it is.
Makes sense. And deadlines.
Crucial. He argues setting firm deadlines forces you to focus on what's essential. It prevents task creep.
Task creep. Love that term. Those little things that just expand to fill all available time.
Exactly, if you let them. Deadlines cut through that.
He also talks about a low information diet, right? For
Right.
those of us drowning in news and notifications.
Yes. Consciously cutting back on unnecessary info consumption. News cycles, endless email checking, massive time sinks, often with zero real value added to your goals or life.
His anecdote is pretty extreme, buying only one newspaper in 5 years.
Yeah, maybe extreme for some, but it makes the point, doesn't it? What would happen if you drastically cut back your info intake? Less noise, more focus.
It's compelling. And for the info you do need, he has reading tips.
Some interesting ones. Using a pen or finger to guide your eyes. Focusing on the inner words of a line to use peripheral vision better. Speed reading techniques, basically. Ever tried those?
I have, actually. They can work, But take practice.
The key filter question he suggests asking constantly is, will I definitely use this information for something immediate and important?
If the answer's no.
Then you can probably ignore it, or at least put it off. And learning to say no, politely but firmly, to non-essential requests, that's a superpower for protecting time.
Absolutely critical. And fighting the interruption impulse.
Yeah, setting up rules, routines, creating those do not disturb blocks in your day to allow for deep work, minimizing distractions.
Okay, so we've defined eliminated. Next is A for automation. This is where it gets really interesting for creating freedom, right? Building systems.
This is huge. Building systems to generate income and manage tasks with minimal personal involvement from you. The goal is creating muses. Yeah, his term for small, defined businesses designed for automation from the start, not just businesses you have to constantly run day to day.
So the business works for you, not the other way around.
That's the core idea. Creating income streams not tied directly to your hours. And he points out, many successful, scalable companies outsource key functions. They don't try to do everything in-house. What could you potentially automate or outsource?
Good question. He talks about finding a niche market.
Very important. Become a big fish in a small pond. Less competition, easier to reach your ideal customers if you serve a specific, maybe underserved group.
And choosing the right product or service for this muse, he has criteria.
Yep, very practical ones. Aim for a price point, he suggests $50 to $100. Manageable fulfillment time, ideally under 4 weeks, and something easily explained via an online FAQ to cut down on customer service time.
Makes sense. What kind of income autopilot options does he explore?
Things like reselling existing products, creating information products, ebooks, courses, or licensing intellectual property. He really highlights info products for their low cost and high scalability.
And you don't need a PhD to be an expert in your niche.
Not according to Ferriss. It's about demonstrating proof. Affiliations, client results, writing, media mentions, showing you know your stuff rather than just relying on formal credentials. How could you demonstrate expertise in something you're passionate about?
Market testing seems vital before going all in.
Absolutely crucial. Minimal investment first. He loves Google AdWords for testing demand, tracking conversion rates, seeing what actually works before you commit big resources. He shares examples. Sherwood and Johanna testing their online ideas this way.
So you test, validate, then build the virtual architecture.
Exactly. Outsourcing the routine stuff. Customer service, fulfillment, admin, virtual assistants, VAs are key here. Ever thought about using a VA?
I have, yeah. Communication seems critical, though.
Totally. Crystal clear instructions, well-defined tasks. He gives examples. And he addresses the security fears about outsourcing, suggesting reputable firms with protocols.
The goal is becoming a remote control CEO, designing a business that largely runs itself.
That's the mindset. Self-correcting, minimal intervention needed. He also mentions using lose-win guarantees or strong guarantees that reduce customer risk to boost sales. Cites Johanna and Sherwood again.
Okay, interesting. So definition, elimination, automation leads us finally to L, liberation. Escaping the office, creating that mobile lifestyle. The dream for many.
This is the payoff, right? Strategically escaping the physical office, living and working from anywhere you choose.
But what if you're still in a traditional job? He has tips for that.
He does. Practical strategies for negotiating remote work. Start small, maybe 1 day a week. Focus on proving increased productivity when you're remote. Sherwood's example is great, proposing a 2-week remote trial. Low risk for the employer, maybe a good first step for you listening.
A trial run, yeah. He also mentions the hourglass approach.
All right. Take a longer, planned, leave a big trip, maybe. Use that successful remote period as proof you can work independently, then negotiate a more permanent remote setup when you return. Clever way to build trust and evidence.
He must address the fears around leaving a stable job, though. Financial worries, resume gaps.
Oh yeah, tackles them head on. Argues that unconventional paths, like extended travel or learning, can actually make you more attractive to future employers. Shows adaptability, resourcefulness. It's not necessarily a negative on the resume.
And this is where mini retirements come in, big time.
Absolutely central to liberation. Not just short vacations, but relocating for, say, 1 to 6 months to a different place, re-examine life, immerse yourself, gain perspective.
He contrasts that with binge travel.
Yeah, which he sees as often exhausting and superficial. Mini retirements are deeper, more intentional.
Financially, is that even feasible for most people, living abroad for months?
He makes a strong case that it often is. Cost of living in many amazing places can be way lower than back home. He shares his own expenses in Buenos Aires, Berlin, as proof. it might be more attainable than you think.
He busts other excuses too. Safety, having kids.
Yep. Offers counterarguments, examples of people doing it successfully. Plus, tons of practical tips. Using reward points, finding accommodation cheap, managing money remotely.
And decluttering before you go. Makes sense. Less stuff, more freedom.
Huge emphasis on that.
Okay.
And staying connected, Skype, VoIP services, all very doable logistically now.
Okay, but there's a deeper aspect to liberation, isn't there? Filling the void.
Hugely important and maybe unexpected. What do you do with all this free time and freedom? After the initial excitement, there can be a sense of emptiness, lack of purpose.
He experienced that himself.
Bravely shares having a panic attack in Buenos Aires after hitting his goals. It highlights that deep human need for meaning, beyond just work and money. Finding purpose in learning, hobbies, service. What would you do to fill that potential void?
It's a crucial question. He warns about mistakes the new rich make, too.
Yeah, like inventing urgency just to feel busy, or getting fixated on one muse as their entire identity. He stresses slowing down, mindfulness, appreciating life, references that slow dance poem, a reminder to savor the journey.
Wow, okay, so pulling it all together. The 4-hour work week is, well, it's a radical perspective, isn't it?
It truly is, a compelling vision for how we could approach work and life. It's a blueprint, really, for designing a life rich in experience and freedom, not just money.
And like you said, we've really only scratched the surface here. There's so much actionable advice, tools, resources, examples packed in there to help you, the listener, actually implement this stuff.
Which really brings it back to the listener. What parts of this new rich lifestyle resonate most with you? Are you thinking about trying any of these strategies?
We definitely encourage you to grab a copy of the 4-hour Workweek, dig deeper into these ideas yourself.
And what's fascinating, I think, is how relevant it still feels years after it first came out, maybe even more relevant now with remote work booming and people rethinking priorities.
Absolutely. That core message, prioritizing time, seeking freedom, it just doesn't get old. It's one of those books that really makes you question your assumptions about work, success, how you could live your life.
So maybe a final thought for our listeners. What's just one small, concrete step you could take, maybe even today, to reclaim a bit of your time or move just slightly closer to a more liberated life?
Great question to ponder. Some real food for thought there.
Yeah, connecting it all, it's more than just a business book. It's kind of a manifesto for a different, maybe more rewarding way to live.
Well said. Thanks for listening to the Book Review Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a comment. See you next time.